Hey, y'all. Welcome to the show.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining the Gunsmith show. We are simulcasting again here on Shooting Gallery New England and Swamp Dog Armory for the third episode of the Gunsmith show. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Mission First Tactical. Guys, please go check out Mission First Tactical. They are a wonderful company. They make some great AR products. I personally use their minimalist stock on the We the People 2020 Fixed Mag 16-inch rifle build you've seen on this channel. I know my boy Swamp Dog has used some of their stuff, so please go check out Mission First Tactical. And also, this podcast is brought to you by our friends at Aegis Gun Care. Best damn lubricant in the mother effing game. Use code hashtag JoeJuice. Save yourself 15% off your entire order. And I'll tell you right now, if you don't put some Joe Juice on your gun, I don't know what you're doing wrong. You're doing something wrong here. So,
yep, it's literally the only gun lubricant that I use anymore.
I use it exclusively at work too. Let's see who we got out in the chat. We got some people out there, Cody. Let's see. We got Krangasco saying, "Let's go, Brandon." We got Safety Doc out there. What's up, Safety Doc? We got HPS. Our good friend Flying Rich, channel member Ron Wayne, Fresh Airways, that is Evan from the ATF cast, or anything that fires. So you're out there. Anything that fires is out there. I don't know if that's Papa Halava or just Evan again. We got Toy Town Inc. What's going on, my friend? Our friends at Aegis Gun Care. Rod, what's up, buddy? We got Warsaw Patriot out there. Yeah. So, what's going on, Cody? How you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be starting to recuperate from the trip this past week.
Yeah, you're going all over this wonderful country.
Yeah, me and Clover Tack both is members of the 1,800-mile road trip club. 2 events and 1,800 miles.
Yeah, really, 2 events. What did Clover do?
He did the Poma outdoor thing, and then he went to the gathering.
Oh, that's cool. I'm glad he went to that. So what are we talking about tonight, Cody?
Tonight we're going to be talking about different mods, upgrades, tweaks, whatever you want to call it, work done to your gun, and why certain things might not actually be best for your everyday carry or defensive handgun just because it's all over the interwebs talking about this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, it's, I have a feeling a lot of people just buy stuff for their guns and have these gunsmiths install stuff for the grams, and I mean, hey,
yeah, really, that's what I'm wanting to do, is because, like you said, most especially the new shooters out there, and I'm sure some of this stuff might not actually be might be overlooked by some of the folks out there that are heavy gun dudes, but going into some of the explanations behind why some of these modifications, instead of just because or it looks good, what is the purpose for it? For example, a trigger. Everybody knows that you got to have a good trigger on your gun, but having the lightest trigger possible is not always the best option, depending on how you're going to use it. A light trigger is great for competition, and some argue that it's good for hunting as well, because you want that. You almost want to be surprised when it goes off in those type of situations, because you definitely don't impact any like movement from squeezing it. Totally opposite in a defensive situation. You don't want that going off until you definitely ready. You need knowing, okay, it's going to be going off now because adrenaline's running, all that stuff. You're going to be squeezing harder than you mean to, anyways. So you definitely don't want a light trigger in that scenario. But
Yeah,
that it's not necessarily a bad thing, just not for that purpose.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend. I tell my customers all the time, just that I tell my customers, listen, if you're carrying a Glock and you want that 2.5 pound trigger pull, it's going to be the worst thing you could possibly do. It's just like, I don't think people can get around the fact that like a stock trigger is good enough for defensive use. Like I have a stock trigger in my everyday carry, so I don't understand why people think they need to have like this like 0.5 pound trigger in their M&P. Like if you're doing some competition use, that is where you want to be. That is what it is. Sorry, my phone's blowing up real quick. But let's see. All right, dude, just leave. Like if you're out there, like you don't need to be in here. You can just leave. Sorry about that. I was addressing something in the comments. Anyway.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was trying to catch up. I was adding our little topic headings where we're talking about triggers now.
Yeah. If it gets to the point where, you still can't, you're still having issues with your trigger, it could just be the gun that you're shooting. Maybe the contour is not working out for you. Like, it doesn't mean you have to think, oh, I need to have that 1 pound trigger pull,
And
And
also that's another thing too, especially while we're on the topic of defensive handguns in particular. Going back to that factory or mil spec type trigger, part of the reason for that being heavier trigger is that that kind of acts as part of your safety thing too for the folks that's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to carry a Glock because there's no external safety on that. That heavy trigger pull is part of the safety for that, which of course the safety on your handgun is your holster. Once it comes out of the holster, it's time to go, and it shouldn't be coming out of the holster unless it's time to go. But that's a topic for another debate.
yeah, exactly. Because you got to think, say if you carry appendix and you're going to put that gun back into your gun, put that back into your holster, and all of a sudden, if you have that light trigger pull, the littlest movement from your clothing, and then boom, that gun's going off right in the family jewels.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, if you're on a strong side carry and you're looking to get that really light trigger pull, like that's okay because you're controlling everything. You can kind of see exactly where it's going in when you're reholstering. So a lighter trigger pull would be ideal. So keep in mind when you're talking to guys that when you're talking to your gunsmith that, excuse me, you're trying to, I think, express the application that you're really trying to get that firearm to work. You want the best explanation, and explaining anything to a gunsmith is going to be key. If you're just saying, oh, I just want to light a trigger pull and that's it, they're going to be like, okay, like, what do they're going to be sitting at their bench like, is he looking for like 3 pounds? Is he carrying this? Is he shooting USPSA? Trigger pull weight can be like the broadest explanation of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's all it actually, even though you're talking about weights, which is a straight up data point fact, it really is subjective when you're talking about it in a situation like that because you don't know if it's a big person, if it's a small person. There's so many variables that go into it. Are they going to be wearing gloves? How are they going to be carrying the gun? What type of situation is it going to be in? to where just because you have that direct pound weight, it don't necessarily mean that, like, for example, say a 4-pound trigger, it don't necessarily mean 4 pounds every time is going to set that off, because you might hold it a little something like, whether it's your finger or like you was talking about, something with a really light trigger, you also have to factor in your garments and stuff like that, snagging it, depending on where on that trigger you're actually applying the pressure or leverage, it'll change what that weight of pressure is for it to break.
Yep. HPS is out there saying if you do a 2-pound trigger in a Glock, you can almost get it to go full auto. It will rapid fire with one trigger pull by the recoil of the first shot. Yes, I've actually had that happen to me where we've replaced the connectors and the trigger pull pretty much went into binary mode, and it's a scary thing. That's why gunsmiths need to check their triggers. They need to test fire these guns. If they're ripping the guts out of the frame, they need to test fire at least one mag, make sure something like that doesn't happen. I mean, like, yeah, it's cool, but you don't really want to be walking around with that. God forbid something happens. Yeah, I think trigger pull weight is key. Let's see. Operation Gunrunner's out in the chat. What's up, buddy? Thank you for joining.
And yeah, I just want to point out for all y'all out of the chat tonight that the reason we're not necessarily going too far in depth on any of these specific things is because we're just kind of going over some of the basic stuff that we feel is not talked about enough, and then we can expand on any of these specific topics that y'all are more interested in by letting us know in the comments of what specific areas you'd like us to expand on, and we'll go ahead and do a full episode on those topics.
Yeah, and touch on triggers again. There is people out there that think that double action triggers on revolvers are a little bit too much. There are ways to lighten them up. I don't recommend unless you have a competent gunsmith that knows exactly what they're doing when they're filing stuff down on their sear connectors on the inside of a double action revolver. Please be careful with that because, again, material is going to wear down over time. Revolver trigger jobs can be very common by a competent gunsmith, and I highly recommend you check it out as long as that gunsmith knows what he's doing. I think that's, the best I can say revolvers. I don't really cover revolvers a lot on my channel because I don't really care to. I'm actually going to be taking my 357 that I have and putting it on consignment at the shop because I just don't really. I don't shoot it. I don't care to shoot it. I much prefer my semi-automatics. So
that's all right. I'm getting more into the revolvers, and I've got a old school Smith & Wesson 357 that I'm going to be doing some upgrades on and plan on featuring on the show.
Nice.
Later on, anyways.
Yeah, I got
for all of our FUD buddies that are more into the old school wood and steel and stuff like that instead of all this modern semi-auto plastic stuff, we got you covered too.
Yep, definitely. I'm more the Plastic Fantastics. Cody is the FUD.
Hey, I would not say that I'm a FUD. I just appreciate things from a different era.
Yeah, I like something that was made after 2000. That's something I'm into, minus Glocks. Or how about this? I like things that are made after, like, the 1950s, where semi-automatics came into effect.
Fair enough. But yeah, I think we covered things on triggers. One thing I do want to mention while we was talking about revolvers as well, something similar to what HPS mentioned out there about if you end up lightening the trigger too much on your semi-auto, and something that it really needs to be mentioned for folks, especially trying to introduce other shooters to it. Any kind of a high-powered cartridge, which a lot of revolvers are high-powered pressure-wise, someone that doesn't know what they're doing, it's going back to the grams and all that stuff. It's really popular or gonna get you views or whatever to give this big gun to, say, a girl or a small person, someone that doesn't know what they're doing, just let's see what happens type of deal. But if you're going to give a revolver, or really any gun, but especially a revolver, to a shooter that you don't know how they're going to be able to handle that, only load that with one round, because you can literally bump fire that revolver from the recoil with someone that doesn't have the proper grip and control and knowing what they're doing. That's going to rotate up and back, and the recoil from the energy of that can literally pull the trigger again, and then that's not facing down range no more.
Yep, we got BV Luminous out there, and we got Mo Theory. He's getting all up on my crap about like, I'm sorry, I don't have I'm getting rid of the revolver. I'm sorry, but B Luminous is out there saying only one round, be dead. Mm-hmm. So,
But yeah, on
anyway,
that note, I think it's we can move on past the triggers. I do just want to mention one more thing from the actual gunsmith side of things, and even for those of y'all out there that kind of do your own hobby work and stuff, make sure you do the proper research on the specific firearm that your work, or the action of that firearm you're working on, because there's a big difference in how the trigger, or the fire control group, how that actually interacts, as far as what surfaces are actually needing to be polished or worked on or whatever. And you can always remove material, but you can't add it back. It's very, very easy to accidentally take away too much when you're trying to do a trigger job, and now that trigger don't even work, and it's basically you just made an illegal full auto, and you can't even stop it. It's just the gun's gonna straight run away.
yep, you're just gonna get a runaway gun. Uh, So let's see. We got Texas Bullet out there, channel member. What's up, again, guys? Channel membership is live on Shooting Gallery New England. We're trying to get Swampy over 1,000 so we can get him in some channel memberships. We also got Chad Newton in the chat. What's up, everybody? Chad, I'm going to be sending your patch out soon. I'm probably going to send that out Monday. I got the last batch of patches going out. But real quick, do you? I got a funny story that happened at work, Cody. Do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to unveil this our new segment on what Joe effed up?
Hey, we'll do it.
All right, guys. So
You know me, I'll make a segment intro about it.
Yeah, we need like a 5 second, like a 5 to 10 second segment, like Joe hurts himself and or Joe fucks something up.
Oopsies.
Yes, yeah, oopsies. This is what we'll do. We'll get the remember from old Mortal Kombat in the 90s, that like oopsies sound that would play during your fights.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'll have to get that. So this week, guys, I was doing a ton of welding. And guys, when you're welding and you're using tungsten rods for a TIG welder, and you got to make sure you get that very fine point, you want to make sure that you got everything all set. So this little mark on my hand right there, it's getting all pussed up. So I managed to stab myself again.
So you got a drill bit straight through your hand once, and now you're gonna stab yourself with a welding rod.
Yep. I stabbed myself pretty good with a welding rod, because the inside channel where the tungsten welding rod lines up through the TIG welder gun, it was getting stuck, and me thinking I'm just gonna, be a belligerent asshole and just like, oh, I'm just gonna rip it out. That doesn't always happen. What the hell's going on? Oh, I'm sorry, something just downloaded. So, that's just gonna pop out. You got to be careful. I do recommend, if you're welding, wear kind of some heavy gloves. It did, and I didn't completely go through my hand. It just went in about 1/9 of an inch. It bled like a sieve though, so that's all pussed over. I'm waiting for it to naturally work itself out. But yeah, I stabbed myself this week, and I broke 4 carbide drill bits, pinning and welding some muzzle brakes because for some reason Landtac muzzle brakes are just made out of like space metal where nothing goes through; it just breaks everything.
Yeah, I do not envy you for your compliance work.
Yeah,
That's
nobody
like
does.
that's like wanting to be a race mechanic and all you do all day is oil changes and brake jobs.
Yep, 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 yep. God.
So on that note, switch
Let's
us
go.
over to the next topic of compensators. We're talking about muzzle brakes.
Yeah. So muzzle
Yeah,
brakes and compensators, guys. I think in this sense, muzzle brakes and compensators, we're going to be mainly talking about rifles, pistols. Yes, for competition. Don't put a compensator on your home defense gun. That's just dumb. Like as a gunsmith, I'm telling you, I hate talking to customers when they're like, "I want to put this really long compensator for my home defense gun," and I look at them. I'm like, what are you in Wayne Manor? Like, do you need like you have this massive space where you got to compensate the pistol? Like, no, you know how loud that's gonna be. You're in a smaller house. That's gonna be loud as shit.
yep. That's one big downside to brakes and compensators is yes, you're going to get a little bit of flatness because the recoil control, all that stuff, but you're going to get almost whatever percentage that you're going to get of an improvement in the handling. You're going to almost get twice that in the uh, increase in sound report. And considering if you're in a self-defense situation in your home, in your garage, or even in your car, the smaller that space is, you want the less noise, not more noise.
Exactly. Now, in terms
Now,
of
but something
competition,
for like pistols though, this also could be for the generic topic. This also would be equivalent to like a ported barrel with some lightning cuts on the slide. Something like that is might be equivalent to more of a mild brake or compensator, and that might not be too bad, especially for like these pocket carry really small guns and stuff like that. A competent porting job, you know, conservative porting job, not don't go way overboard and stuff, can be good for a defensive gun, and obviously it's something you're going to want for sure on a competition gun.
yeah, exactly. And now on the gunsmithing side too, when you're say you're just a home hobbyist or you actually are a gunsmith or looking to become a gunsmith, compensator is going to be one thing that you definitely need to learn how to. It's going to be all with timing the muzzle brake or compensator, making sure that sometimes depending on if you're using it to extend the length, you're gonna have to pin and weld that. So most people do like a 14.5 with a really long muzzle brake to get it to 16 inches. So there's things that gunsmiths need to know. It's not rocket science. Mostly, it's throw the crush washer on, wrap it around until it's tight, and then time it perfectly. You want to make sure that it is, all say if there's 3 holes on the top, you want those holes facing as straight up as possible. I usually use a bubble level or some type of level device to make sure the compensator is as straight as it possibly can. And sometimes on pistols, though, you're not going to be really timing them. It's pretty much getting them tight, straight up to the slide, and use a lot of red Loctite. So there's some application methods to installing muzzle brakes and compensators, but it all depends again on the application that the shooter is going to be using. If they're a 3-gun shooter, you want them to have a really effective muzzle brake to keep that gun flat, particularly
Yep.
with rifles.
And
If
also on that note, I do want to add, since I just came back from a rifle competition this past weekend, a tip for people on the competition side of things, which as you mentioned, the first thing I want to add on if you're going to use a muzzle brake, make sure you know how that muzzle brake is supposed to function, because they are done differently. Some of them are done more like a radial type thing and not just like your basic up and down, left and right type pattern. And for those up and down ones like you mentioned, to take it the next step, like to give yourself a little bit of an edge for competition, which again, this is strictly for competition. You don't want to do this on a defensive type setup. If you're right-handed, cock that muzzle brake about 10 to 15 degrees left of center. If you're left-handed, do the same thing opposite of the way you shoot, because when you shoot it, especially for long guns specifically, that will keep that upward arc to a minimum and not just the flatness.
Yep.
So, something I picked up from Jerry Michalek, and any of his tips, if you can even get like a fraction faster, is going to be, something that I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yep. Definitely. I don't know. In terms of self defense, I just like an A2 flash hider will be perfectly fine.
Yep.
I don't think you should really need, especially again, this is in terms of like rifles. I don't think you need like a Gemtech muzzle can or some type of surefire muzzle can. No, or like for people with AKs, like can you imagine using like a JMac Customs brake on an AK for home defense? Like you remember we shot those at range day. Those things like on that Draco, that thing was nuts.
Yeah, or whatever that brake they had on the Mutant that you could hear literally across the parking lot on the other side, like an acre away. You don't want that going off in your 10-yard hallway.
I love the guys at CMMG so much, but that brake is like, I think of the Mike from CMMG. He said he's like, oh yeah, no, it's completely obnoxious, but we love it. Like it's amazing.
Yep. Which brings us to another point about compensators too. Even though they are a really good functional upgrade, you also have to consider the situation in which you're going to be using it. For example, again, personal experience. I just came back from the Makers match this past weekend, and I had a really awesome muzzle brake that's perfectly functional, but that sucker is really loud. If you don't go to public ranges a lot or shoot with a bunch of people a lot, you ain't going to think about it. But when you end up going in one of them situations and you have this awesome muzzle brake, all of a sudden you're that guy with the loud ass muzzle brake that everybody is giving you funny looks about.
Dude, I work at an indoor range and I have to deal with people that put these loud muzzle brakes on. I just despise it. Like indoor ranges and muzzle brakes, no.
And another thing too, that was actually just pointed out to me this weekend while we're on the topic of ported barrels, compensators, muzzle brakes, all of that stuff. You also have to factor in your environment, because if you're in, like, say, Utah, Arizona, more arid environment with a lot of dust, that's going to, all that extra concussion is going to kick up all that dust. Same thing if you're like in a snowy environment, or for example, you're out in the woods and stuff hunting or something like that. You might like kick up a bunch of leaves or whatever. That stuff like that, you have to consider that you're definitely not going to be like on the packaging of that muzzle brake, but it's actual real world situation or consequences of using a compensator.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, there's a bunch of them out there that look sick, wicked, awesome, whatever you want to call it, but especially for muzzle brakes and compensators, there's a lot more to it than just how it looks or even how it sounds. So to sum it all up on that, what would your takeaway be on compensators or muzzle brakes for defensive use?
I'd say defensive use, have something that is not completely obnoxious, but Have something that works for your environment. Competition use, fair game. Pistols, don't put a compensator in your pistol for self-defense. Don't do it.
Yep, I think we're both on agreement on that. That compensators and muzzle brakes definitely have a better place in competition or hunting use than defensive use. That's one of them things like a light trigger that you don't necessarily want to have on your go-to defensive gun. Same thing. Even if you like it, again, talk about that obnoxious brake on the CMMG. Just because it's awesome for videos and you like shooting it outside, something goes bump in the night at 2 in the morning, and you go out into the living room, and have that going off. You ain't gonna be grabbing ears to put on before you shoot it, neither. So
Exactly.
you're gonna get the full effect of that yourself at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
And in an enclosed area too, to just have it bouncing back on you.
Yeah, this kind of goes into effect too of like say like again as a gunsmith your customer is saying you want to put all these like super crazy modifications on a home defense gun where essentially a shot Mossberg 930 turns into pretty much a poor man's 930 JM Pro model for self defense. Like it's you got to have some discretion with your customers, but uh we got you just got to have that conversation because you don't want to have to explain to your customers why he just dumped all this money into work that you're going to be doing to his gun, that if he ever uses that gun, that potential $2,000-$3,000 bill is going to be sitting in an evidence locker for a little bit.
Yep. So I think we pretty much cleared things up on the compensator topic.
What else do
So
you
we'll
have
move on to
on the docket? Grip texture. Oh, okay. Okay, so
Joe Morgan saying shotguns in an apartment is a bad idea. I prefer a pistol or rifle with frangible bullets. Hell, 22 rifle will do if you have a good, reliable gun. Yeah, that's another thing too, but that goes more into like ammunition specifically being, there is a big difference in defensive ammunition versus training and match ammunition. Same thing, hunting ammo. That's a whole rabbit hole in and of itself.
yeah, definitely. CT Designs is out there. What's up, buddy? Thank you for joining. So grip texture. So for me, grip texture can have a wide variety of use. There is several different ways to add texture. There are like the grip tape, like wraparound grip stuff for handguns, and I think some AR-15s.
Yep.
There's stippling. There is
Checkering.
checkering on bolt action rifles for basically for range use. There's some checkering on shotguns and stuff like that, but I don't see it being like that intense for home defense. Most people, what I think of grip texture, I think is stippling. Do you want to explain what stippling is, Cody? For the people that don't know.
But yeah, stippling is where you're burning in the texture onto a polymer grip. Usually polymer. It can be done on wood, but that's basically what it is, where you're adding texture by literally melting away some of the material. And because you're doing it that way, you can have countless patterns or styles or whatever of that texture, to where you can do something simple, to just give you a little bit more grip, or you can go all out super aggressive and it's more grippy than sandpaper type of stuff.
Yeah, but you get that one dude that says, I don't need that. I can just get some grip textures that makes it the same thing. Now, is it going to be as effective? Probably not. If you're running in a hot sweat competition use and you want your gunsmith to install that grip tape on like a CZ Shadow, a lot of sweat during the day is probably going to melt that adhesive off.
Okay? Yep, because heat and moisture is the usually the enemy of adhesives. But
Yeah.
now on the same side, if like for a defensive gun, I actually have recommended, and I've even recommended to some of my law enforcement friends that was asking about getting stippling done and stuff like that. The amount of money that you're going to pay to have a competent stippling job done might not necessarily be worth it for whatever your specific use is. If you're just wanting something that's going to give you that extra grip to it for an adverse type situation, grip tape might be perfect for you. And then if it wears out, you pop some more on there because you're constantly maintaining that gun. It's not something that you're just throw it on there and then go set it on the shelf and then you want to go shoot it on the weekend or something like that. Same thing. If someone that's wanting something that's gonna last and they can hand it down or whatever, you're gonna want one of the more permanent grip modifications, whether that be stippling, whether that be checkering, or nowadays another common alternative is laser etched grip patterns, which give you some more. It gives you some of that texture without necessarily being as aggressive as some stippling can be, because it don't have to be cut as deep as a lot of the stippling does. Because when you're stippling, like I said, you're melting that material. So the material where you're putting the tip of that bit, shaper, whatever you want to call it, is also oozing above where that flush level was on the grip beforehand. So you're not just digging out the texture, you're also creating raised edges. And if you don't go back and like smooth them over, that's where a lot of that overly aggressive texture feeling for people that might not have a lot of experience with different kinds of stippling, that might have been their only hands-on feeling with that. No, that's why I don't like that type of thing. And the same type of thing, because it is a hand done thing, you're going to have different levels of quality based on the person that did its skill level. And them levels of quality equate to higher pricing, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Now, on the other hand, checkering. So, say you have like an older, like say like Ithaca, or older Remington that has that wood stock. Checkering would give that same feel, but it comes at a price. Checkering can be very expensive to have done because not a lot of people do it anymore. You're gonna get not as much of like a serious grip like a melted plastic would, but for the most part, you're gonna have a relatively stout grip on it. It's not, you're even in sweat, your hands aren't going to move around as much, whether it be on the forend or the stock. I wouldn't say wood checkering is good for competition use. That would be one I would not recommend.
That's one thing I will second that as well. Personally, for a revolver, checkered grips and a nice finish is great to look at. If you're wanting to actually do some serious shooting, especially the competition shooting, a good rubberized, grippy grip that's going to give you a little bit more of that recoil absorption and the grip to physically hold on to it is going to benefit you a lot more than a good looking piece of checkered wood. But the great thing about revolvers, it don't take 5 minutes to change them grips out. You can have you a nice set of checkered grips. And same thing with different some rifles and stuff like that. But especially with revolvers, you can swap them grips out, have your nice set for being in the safe or in a case or on the wall or whatever. And when you're actually wanting to go and shoot it, you can change them grips out to the modern quote unquote type grips and go to town.
Just go to town, huh? Oh man,
I do want to point out a couple of comments that I've seen.
I love how right over the head. I'm like, damn, you're not even playing, not even picking up on that, Cody. Come on.
No, I'm just ignoring it and not playing into it. I'm refusing to admit that I stepped into that And on the way, Appalachian Gunrunners mentions his Shield Plus is perfect, no stippling or grip tape needed. Yes, that's another thing I was wanting to touch on. A lot of companies are actually taking that into consideration now, and they're putting different kind of grip textures in the factory guns that wasn't there so much. Like, say, go back to a factory Gen 2, Gen 3 Glock, your grip might be of just a few bumps or literally a smooth sided grip. Now you're having different patterns, and even was it the Springfield where they literally like had words in the grip saying grab it here and stuff.
Hold on. We do not speak of Springfield on this show. They're the company that who shall not be named. I just had to deal with the Helions this week, and I absolutely despise those guns. I think they're stupid as all hell. But yeah, there is that company that has Grip Zone.
Yeah. But the same thing, even something like that, as long as you're having the texture that you can get a good grip on, that's the kind of the purpose we're getting at here. And also going back with the on the topic of grips, where you're getting a little bit past like specifically pistols, where you're literally not just talking about the grip itself, but say doing stippling or some type of texturing on the spot where what people sometimes call a gas pedal, somewhere to give your hand your thumb somewhere else to grab, or some people would do the same thing on the front edge or the bottom of the trigger guard. You know, anywhere that you can increase the friction between where you are contacting that pistol or rifle, same thing. The more that you can create friction between you and the gun, the more stable it's going to be.
Well said. And again, some of them, especially with AR-15s now, there are so many grips out there that have all different type of textures where you don't even have to do that. And even some handguards are coming stock with like some type of grippy material, whether it be a
Yep.
stippling feel already built into the gun.
And that's another thing that's really great about 3D printing is with 3D printing, for the folks that are into that stuff, you can literally build in any kind of texture that you want on that print. If you want it to be some kind of wild snake scale pattern or whatever, you want it to be all out fractals and geometric shapes and whatever you want, it can literally be made into it as if it for the equivalent of like an OEM gun. They'd have to put thousands and thousands into custom molds and stuff like that to have that same feature on a factory product.
Yeah, definitely. C&T Designs is out there right now. Big shout out to him. He says woodchecking on a 1000 OE and Ithaca Featherlight have shot them my whole life. All right. Yep. So yeah, sir. Good. Back to competition use. The only time you're gonna see woodcheckering on that is with like trap or skeet guns, and that actually makes a huge difference in the shotgun.
I just want to point out Chad Noonan's comment. That's exactly what I was trying to get at of why grip is important.
Chad Newton, I love your comments. Yeah, so I think guys, that's when it comes to like grip texture, there's a whole bunch of different avenues we can go down. And again, please stay tuned and comment below. We can reach out to people that specialize in grip texturing, whether it be stippling or whatnot, and let us know if you want us to expand on that topic. We can have a designated video on any of these topics that we're going over.
I want to point out Appalachian Gunrunner's comment real quick while we're still on the topic of grip. It's all about control. Before I turn around loose, I want to know I have as much control on where it's going as I physically can.
Yep,
That's the same in any shooting situation.
Yep,
and that's
yep,
why
that's
I was
great.
to like wrap it up on the grip thing. I think that it is crucial on both defensive use and competition use, but the level or aggressiveness on it depends on what situation you're going to be in.
Yep.
And like you can pick and choose how you want to accomplish that because there is so many different options, but any of them modifications, upgrades, work to increase the grip is going to benefit.
Yep. Yep, definitely. I 100% agree. So, well, what do we got next on the docket, Cody? Optics. Ooh, oh, okay.
And I'm going to break this down into two separate sections. First, we're going to start off with slide cut optics for pistols, defensive use pistols and competition both. Do you think that optic sighted pistols are defensive or competitive best use?
Optics, slide riding optics are the best thing the industry has done in a long time. I have very poor eyesight, and I can still see the traditional front post 2 dot rear sight. So, but it's starting to go. It's starting to go, and I find that red dot sights or green dot sights, for that matter. So always see, for instance, like, hey, do your customers have stigmatisms? Red dots or green dots can actually tend to help astigmatism a lot better. It doesn't flare out. They're able to easily pick up that.
I do want to throw out an anecdote here while you're on the topic of checking into green reticle optics, dots, lasers, etc. I used to have a background in competitive gaming as well, doing first-person shooter games and stuff like that. And a lot of the high-end competitors, and it don't matter what the game is, as long as you can like customize it and stuff, you watch a lot of the high-end competitors, it's always going to be the smallest dot per se that you can get as far as like the physical size on the screen and a bright green color because green shows up for most people a lot easier regardless of like the brightness and regardless of what color background and foregrounds you have. Green can show up better than red for a lot of people.
Yep. I see green a lot easier, and I tend to like all my guns that have green dots if I have a dot. So all around,
but it's not for everybody. There are folks that can see red better, or even the new there's a lot of optics companies coming out now with amber colored reticles.
I've seen those
for folks that have a trouble seeing green and red, like colorblind type issues as well.
Yeah, I've seen Holosun come out with the ambers. Those are actually pretty cool. But yes, there's so many different applications. Like you see the 365 XLs, they're coming out with they come standard with optics cut. Most even defensive guns now are coming optics cut now. So that is something the industry is just moving towards. I install optics on slides more often than you think. I have stripped screws out on 365 XL slides more than I can count, and I have to send the slides back to the factory because you can't get an easy out into those freaking things, so they have to send them back. It's just I kind of want to call Sigma. Can you just send me the bit that you guys use? Like, just tell me where to get the bit so I don't have to send these slides back. Just keep that aware if you're trying to install an optic on a 365. At one point they were using a lesser strength screw for the optics plate on the slide, and they're very easily stripped.
Yep, that's one thing. When you factor in the physical smallness of those parts, like them optic screws for the slide, they can't be that big or it's going to be going through the slide and impacting the function of the gun. Something that small is crucial that the material's done right, tempering's done right, all that kind of stuff, because of the forces that are in play there. It has to hold that optic tight so that it'll hold zero and be able to handle all them vibrations, shock, all that stuff from the slide going back and forth, and an explosion happening right underneath it.
Yeah. Appalachian gun runners out there saying
Yes,
an
I was just
etch reticle is probably going to be your best bet. To say your battery goes down and you still need to use your gun, God forbid, in a defensive situation or competition. I'm still kind of new to competition shooting, but I have heard stories of people where their batteries die and their optics stay at competition. What are you going to do? If you have an etch reticle, you at least have something.
Yep. And that's one thing. Shout out to Swamp Fox Optics. I actually had a chance to use their blade etched reticle prism scope at the competition this past weekend, and that actually does come in handy, especially when you don't necessarily think to check the battery levels on your optic, and then it ends up getting dimmer and dimmer as the match goes on.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I wish they made batteries that you never had to change out, but I mean, hey, etch reticles are a better idea. Holosun and Trichicon both have guns that are made. Both have not guns. They have optics made for that come with etch reticles now. Primary Arms is putting etch reticles, so it actually is a good thing. But let's get
it's
on
actually
to
kind of funny that people like that we was talking about the etched reticles and stuff, and that kind of being something that's more new to the industry, so to speak, as far as the amount of folks that are actually implementing that. And that used to be the standard way of doing things on
Yep.
optics, and it's starting to make its way back around full circle.
Yep.
But now let's move past pistol slide mounted pistol optics and talk about optics for say specifically a defensive long gun, because I know you have some specific thoughts on that topic.
I'm very strong opinions, and guys, I install a lot of optics on guns. And when customers say, "Yeah, well, I'm using this gun for home defense," and it's an RDB or a Tavor, and they buy a Vortex Strike Eagle, 1-6, and they have this like cantilever mount, like the typical AR cantilever mount. It's just like reasons for home defense. Why do you need an LPVO for home defense? I can understand like property management, but if you're using a 5.56 for in the home self defense, you do not need a LPVO. You don't. A simple reflex reticle or a holographic sight will do just the trick. You don't need that.
Well, that would be my first question to somebody that's asking about setting up a home defense gun, especially a home defense long gun.
Yeah. Like,
how is your home set up?
Yeah, again,
how big is it? You live in a single wide trailer where you're going to have like 10-yard shots is going to be your longest thing, or do you live in you moved into Pablo Escobar's villa and you got whole courtyards inside your house? I mean, you gotta factor in, because you don't want like a 50 cal Barrett with a mile-long scope to shoot down the hallway. And that's a super extreme example, but I mean it illustrates the point. You don't want to take your hunting gun and the hunting scope and just shoot it inside the house.
I like PV Loomis is out there and says, if you say I don't need it, I'm buying effing 2 from the next guy. Sorry, that's funny. That is some good stuff. So that's perfect example. LPVOs, though, if you're using them for a competition, especially in 3-gun, you're getting out from between 50 to sometimes 250 yards. So that would make sense. But yeah, if you're Jim
and also Bob, same type thing where we're talking about like your home. Do you have a big yard or something like that where you might have to defend yourself from someone that's done broke in through the fence and is not in the house yet, but you have your cameras and stuff, you clearly know what's going on, they already broke the gate and this and that, you might need to have something that can give you, that little bit more distance. But it all comes down to what your particular situation is going to be. Like you said, you don't want something you're going to be able to crank it out to 300 or 400 yards. Where are you going to shoot that in your house?
And you understand my aggravation. Swamp Fop optics. Wow, it's getting down to the
Well,
end of the night,
you
guys.
answered the question for me right there.
Yeah. Swamp Fox Optics. Go check them out.
Swamp Fox Optics Blade is my recommendation for pretty much any home defense setup for an AR, because you have the great thing about the blade. Not to get too product placement type of stuff, but it is different than a lot of other things, and the fact that it was made specifically from the ground up as a defensive use optic. Instead of having bullet drop compensators for shooting out to distance, it has literal markings in your reticle for offset compensation for up close. For if you have to, say you get something goes bump in the night, you have to go run in the kitchen, and all of a sudden you see, bad guy holding your 12-year-old daughter trying to take her, out the back door. You need that. You don't want to, use your regular optic, not thinking about the offset, and end up, canoeing her head. I mean, and it's set up for them 5, 10, 15, 25-yard ranges. That's pretty much going to be ideal regardless of the size of your house. There's very few houses, even someone like Trump or Wayne Manor or something like that, where you're going to have more than a 50-yard open space that's enclosed. And you can also use that regular 50-yard zero with your Kentucky windage holdage stuff or holdover stuff out to further distances.
Yeah, definitely.
And you don't have to crank it or change it, zoom in or change all that stuff. It's built right into that reticle, and it uses an etched reticle to where it doesn't matter if it's illuminated or not. You still get your reticle.
Yep, definitely. We got a super chat out there. DLD is saying, "Thanks for sharing all your knowledge, Swampy." Great, appreciate that, Dark. Thank you again for the super chat. Okay. Let's see make sure I'm not missing anybody in the chat. Wow, the chat's like going out of control. Everyone's saying hello to everybody.
Yeah, I was trying to look, but it looks like they're kind of having conversations mostly to themselves. I was trying to keep an eye, anybody actually popping in comments or questions to make sure that they don't get missed.
Yeah, they're just having conversations by themselves. But we damn near took this almost to a straight hour. That's. I looked. I'm like, the time just flew by.
Yeah, but I guess let's go ahead and do our topic recap real quick on the point of optics. Going back to the first thing of slide mounted optics on pistols for red dots, etc. That's your main thing.
Yep.
My thoughts on that is it's kind of not necessarily mandatory, but it's a given that will be an improvement regardless. Defensive
no matter
use,
what
competition use, whatever.
Yeah, no matter what you're using, a slide mounted optic for your given gun is going to immensely make your shooting a lot better, even if you're shooting steel or paper. I will say it might get a little bit tough because some red dots aren't built for like the bigger caliber. So if you're shooting like a 10 millimeter and a 45 ACP or a 357 Magnum, you might have some type of re-zeroing issues depending on the optic you buy. So just keep that in mind. But if you're running a 9 millimeter or even like a 22, like you're gonna have a ball of time just shooting. It's just absolutely fun.
Yep. And then as far as long guns, I think we're both kind of agreement there too that it's really dependent on your situation. You
Yeah.
want to talking about defensive use. Well, same thing, competition, hunting, whatever. There's so many options of optics. You gotta tailor it to what your situation is going to be in that you're using it for.
Definitely. And again, if you're just in a double wide trailer, you don't need an LPVO on a 18-inch barrel.
Yeah.
You just get yourself a nice vortex crossfire.
Yeah, well, that's also one more topic too that we can touch on very briefly here, and that's barrel length.
Yeah. Don't be running a 20-inch DMR for home defense. You're going to be hitting every wall and making more noise than you possibly can think of. The shortest configuration and legal configuration possible. So that doesn't, I'm not saying, if you're running an SBR, just make sure you get the proper tax stamp. If you're running a shorter gun and you're running a suppressor, again, remember, length is key. So the shorter, the better. And again, if you're using an SBR, make sure you have the proper paperwork, or
Yep.
SBS, for that matter.
Yep. Because that's the same thing. You got to factor in, you're not going to be shooting out to 500, 1,500 yards. You don't need that longest barrel possible to pull out every bit of velocity that you can. You want something that you're going to actually be able to move around with. And your house, you're going to know your house better than anyone else. You're going to know, say your doorways might be a little wider than someone else. They might be a little shorter than someone else. That's another thing when you're doing a home defense build. You need to take that setup that you've put together and run some drills going through your house, making sure it will fit around this corner. I can do this or whatever, or even if it don't, what those limitations are, so you can address them before finding out at 2 o'clock in the morning while someone's coming in trying to kidnap your kids.
Exactly. Don't wait till the very last minute, and when you need it the most, don't wait. Do your research and make sure you have the right gun for your given situation.
Yep. And on that note, I was just about to switch us to our last topic, which is just the overall recap for those that kind of missed some of the stuff at the beginning. We'll go ahead and mention the topics that we covered and our overall thoughts and opinions on them, starting with triggers.
Yeah, recapping from triggers, guys. Again, tell the gunsmith that it's installing these triggers what your given application is. What are you using for? Are you a competition shooter? You want it for home defense? You have arthritis, and it's just your home defense gun is just really, really tough to pull back on, pull the trigger back on. Give them the most information possible. Then we touched on we went from triggers and we went to compensators
Grip
again.
texture. Yeah, compensators.
Yeah,
Compensators and ported barrels.
Yep, compensators and quarter barrels. I think out of anything we talked about tonight, your situation and the given purpose of that firearm is key to what you're going to be choosing for the product and how you're going to be installing that product. So again, make sure you know what you're installing, make sure you know what the use of that firearm is. As a gunsmith, you want to make sure you're going to be installing the proper way, whether it be you need again, 90% of the time it's going to be a crush washer and then thread locker for pistols. Sometimes you got to do rings to spacers and stuff like that. And then we went to grip texture, and that has a whole rabbit hole of, again, what are you using it for? If you're in the hot, sweaty climate, you want some aggressive grip texture so your hands aren't slipping, but don't make sure it's not like a stick-on thing because moisture and heat is going to melt that adhesive away. You want to make sure you're able to control every variable of recoil when it comes to that. So that's why we discuss grip texture
and how it's important for both, or really any use. That particular upgrade, quote unquote, is pretty much going to benefit regardless what your uses for that particular firearm is going to be.
Yeah.
And then from grips, we went to the optics.
Yep, optics. Slide rider optics, best in the world. LPVOs for home defense, no.
Not so
Just
good.
no. Not just no. Okay. No, guys, you don't need that for your. You don't need a 6 to 24 by 50 on your Tavor 7. Like, no.
Also, another thing too, talking about especially home defense use setup in particular, all of these different variables we've been talking about, you also want to factor in weight, how much extra
Yes.
weight you're adding to that gun. Because same thing, you're going to be having your adrenaline running, all this other stuff. You're not going to want to be toting around an 8-pound rifle down your hallway.
Mm-hmm. You don't want that happening at all. That's not going to be a fun time. Your arm's going to be tired by just going around the next corner.
Yeah. So I think
So
that's pretty much overall, know what it is that you're wanting to use that weapon for, and that will lead you to a better informed decisions of what modifications you might want to do to it or might not want to do to it. And
yep.
if your use is just for looking awesome on the grams, that's perfectly fine. This is America. It's our God-given right to own guns, as many guns as we want, and all that. And you, if that's your reason for wanting it, is just because it looks cool and whatever, that's perfectly fine. That do it. But as long as you're not going into it and just doing that because you think that's going to help you out for whatever the reason is that you're hoping it's going to help, do some research on it before just doing what the cool things are.
Yeah. But, a good example is Flying Rich out there. 24 times for the Crumpy's home. So, Crump's
Well,
home.
he does have a submarine pit and a moat around the house. So that one, you again, your situation, that might be some longer distance, or you want some heavier magnification to be able to pop someone through that submarine window, then yeah, that situation might call for something a little heavier magnified.
Yeah. Apparently, Dark is a expert at this, but no one asked him, so it is what it is. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight here on the Gunsmith Show. We really appreciate everybody hanging out. Next week we're gonna be back. I don't know. We keep saying we're gonna be on Utreon.
We're gonna start streaming to Utreon starting in April. We're
April.
trying to spread the word out some more and grow the audience, which I've seen most of y'all are more and more of y'all coming each episode we're doing, because the more y'all that's out there, the more y'all can actually like lead the conversation. Let us know what it is that you're actually interested in. And like we've had this episode, people popping in different kinds of suggestions or comments and stuff, that goes along with what we're talking about. Because honestly, the whole reason we do in the show is to try to spread information out there to y'all. And make sure y'all share it with your friends and stuff, because the knowledge, it don't matter how much we know, any of us, even y'all out there in the comment and stuff like that, if we keep it to ourselves, what good is it really going to do?
Yeah, someone's got to get the information out there. And again, we're not experts, guys. We're just giving you our honest opinion and what we've experienced. So, but for everybody that's watching, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next week here at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Gunsmith Show.
Y'all be good.
Later.